Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Mind, Your Reality, Your Results, a weekly live show where I speak with an expert in the subject of mindset so you can change your mindset and ultimately get the amazing results that you want in your life. I'm so pleased to be welcoming Emmy Rousseau to the show today. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Leah. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it will be our pleasure. I'm certainly very excited for this conversation.
Me
In
too.
case we haven't met yet, my name's Leah Fink. I'm the owner of All Thrive, and I help give people the skills they need to have amazing relationships, personally and professionally. So if you want to ever reach out, learn a little bit more, or even get a free consultation, you can go to meetleah.ca, and I would love to chat with you. But you are obviously not just here for my brilliance today. You are here for the wonderful Emmy. And so if you have any comments, if you have any questions, please put those in. Even if you're watching the show and we're no longer live, if you add your comments and questions, we'll be able to get back to you because you don't want to miss this opportunity. So, Emmy, as I love to start the show off, do you want to share a little bit how you got to be here, how you became a warrior of love?
Well, thanks. It's a super long story, of course, but the short version is that growing up, about from the time I was a teenager, I felt like something's off here. Something isn't right. I don't fit in. And it wasn't because I was, a socially awkward child or anything like that, but it just felt like I don't think like everybody else. Something's going on. And it wasn't until years later in my mid 30s that I was diagnosed with a depressive disorder. And so then, you go through the whole thing of meds and trying the meds, and this one doesn't work, and this one makes you like totally off the wall. And anyways, you go through that whole process. I went through that whole process. And I also started building up, but I found I was just flatlined. Like when we got to stable was flatlined. So I used to be like, Titanic. I'd see it 100 times. I'd cry every time, right? And then it was like, I couldn't cry. I didn't cry at anything. I wasn't ever feeling really happy. Yes, I wasn't sad anymore, but wasn't feeling. I really wasn't feeling. And that didn't feel good. So I thought there's got to be another way to get back to what feels real and normal for me. So I started amassing this incredible toolbox of different strategies and tools that would help me. And then through it, I found that other people were going through the same thing where nobody could see that they were depressed because they weren't, they weren't talking about it. They generally, the people that I knew had super successful lives. And so they were holding up this amazing mask, as we all wear masks, of course, but this amazing mask of like, I've got it all. Everything is fine. I mean, I was a teacher for 22 years. Nobody wants to think like my kid's being taught by a depressed person. Like, so there was a lot of like in that whole realm of people didn't say what was really going on. And so, but I thought, okay, realized other people are feeling it too, and we can't see it. That's the invisible disability part. It didn't show. And so I was able to start helping other people with it. And recently, in the last year, I discovered an incredible tool called Intensati Spiritual Fitness. And the woman who started it, and we'll probably talk a little more about Intensati later, but the woman who started it called herself a warrior of love. And she unfortunately passed away in January of this year. And her goal was to reach 7.6 million people with Intensati Spiritual Fitness. And her goal was just to spread love. And so many of us took up that, like, okay, we're going to reach the 7.6 million. We'll be warriors of love. And so that's how I came to be a warrior of love.
Wow. I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. That is very powerful. And for any of the other musical fans out there, I don't know if you've heard of Next to Normal. It's a woman who is struggling with bipolar and going through, medication understanding. And all I could think of is she has a song called I Miss the Mountains, which is about this sense that, I do believe very strongly in medication and, mental health supports and all these different things you can use. And also, I really love how you highlighted that struggle of it. It's not just getting rid of symptoms in a way, it's really finding this balance in your life.
Exactly. And flatline did not feel balanced. It was just flatline. And I was like, no, there's got to be better than this. So,
Yeah,
absolutely.
of course. Like no one deserves a flatline life. And especially, I also like that you brought up at the beginning that when you were growing up, you just kind of thought, maybe this is what everyone's like. Maybe it's just me being socially awkward. What was kind of that experience? Because I know this can be very different for people of you to have that diagnosis? Was it an empowering thing to recognize other people were like you? Was it a challenging thing because there is all this stigma?
Well, it for me was really a big relief because I had felt like something was wrong with me for years. Like I said, since I was like, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years old. And so to finally realize that nothing was wrong with me, I had this chemical imbalance in my brain. And so it was just that's what it was. And I was still, right from the beginning, I was relieved to have the label because I knew then in my head, first I thought, I know what's wrong with me. Now, of course, now I know nothing was wrong with me. But right away I was like, okay, I know what it is. Now we can deal with it. And then it was my mom that came along and said, there's nothing wrong with you. This is no different. Like you have a chemical imbalance in your brain. It's no different than a diabetic who needs insulin. Nobody goes around saying like, oh my God, stop taking the insulin. Like you just don't. I mean, there are people that believe and I'm not saying it's not the only way, but people don't go around shaming people for taking insulin, like, or having diabetes. Like there's something, wrong with you. It's just, okay, you have this medical condition. And any depressive disorder is a medical condition. And it is not, and when you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, you need some way to be able to balance it. And for some people, it's medication. For a lot of people, it's medication. And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with you just because you have a chemical imbalance in your brain. So it was really empowering when my mom said, no, like this is no different. And just because there is a stigma doesn't mean there should be a stigma. And so that got me, I've been an activist since I was like 8 years old against racism. And then that just got me onto, mental health activism and so many more things. So,
yeah. When we are having, which is just wonderful for me to say, I worked in addiction and mental health for many years. And so also close to my heart, and just seeing the shift even over the last 10 years of how the world perceives mental health, how we talk about it. I think there's a generational piece that the younger generation are coming in with more awareness. I mean, maybe more mental health problems due to society and some pieces there, but also, an awareness and empathy for it, that it is, like you said, just like a physical illness.
yes.
Right? There is something that has happened and is not in alignment, and there are different things we can do to fix it. And so I'm really excited to talk about you with those today. So do you find too that the stigma is still kind of limiting the people that you work with, in terms of like they're still having self-judgments or still being very judged by others?
100%. I think, the judgment is more heavily self-judgment because, especially like you said, generationally, it's I think very different. My daughter is 23, and so many people around her age are saying like, yes, I have depression. Yes, I have anxiety. Yes, I have. They are willing to, even on social media, just go out and say it, whereas anyone my age is very few people are saying, yes, I have this. Yes, I have that. Yes. And I think it's because we were brought up that, especially as women, not only, well, actually, let me talk about both sexes because there's issues with both. But for women, we were socialized to be like, you have to be the perfect mom. You have to be the perfect wife. You have to be the perfect this, whatever it is, right? And mental illness didn't fit into that at all. It was seen as there was such a stigma. So when you grow up with it, even when it becomes less stigmatized in society. I mean, I don't think it's socially acceptable yet, but less stigmatized, you still have that thing going on in your brain. Plus, especially if it's, whether it's a depressive or an anxiety or anything like that, like then it's doubly like your brain is working even more against you to be like, no, come on, dummy. It's really, of course you should feel, shame about it. There's something wrong. So it's just a double thing to work through. Now with men, I think that actually, although men have much privilege in the world versus women, in mental health, I would say they're the ones doubly disadvantaged because it's so much less okay even now for men to say, I have any kind of challenges with my mental health. It's so stigmatized because men have to be the strong, macho, whatever one. So in our own way, we're all socialized to have our own perfection or our own, strength or whatever. And people don't realize that vulnerability is actually a strength. And so being able to say like, yes, I'm struggling in whatever way it is, whether it's with mental health, whether it's with finances, whether it's with whatever, that's how we can grow and become stronger when we're able to be vulnerable. But there's so much stigma in that, especially if you're in, certain professions, you feel like you have to still have it all together. Or if you're a mom of young kids, like there's so many reasons people have that they have to not show that they have any kind of invisible disability.
Totally. Well, this could be a very big discussion if we start going into systemic pieces of this, and probably not something we're going to solve in a half-hour conversation today. One of the things that came to mind, though, when you were speaking in terms of that generational gap and maybe just an awareness of what people were raised with, is also a lot of the ideas I think around mental health came from, just toughen up, just, pull up your bootstraps, grit your teeth, get through it kind of mentality, and put in the effort, right? A lot of, I think, people who don't understand mental health is, if you just changed your mind, if you put in more effort, you would be able to get out of bed in the morning, right? And what I like actually, though, about what we're talking about today is the idea of you can put in effort, but it's effort to create tools that support you, not just to like kind of mentally beat yourself into shape, into doing what someone expects of you. Because that was the old way of doing things. It was just like, be mad at yourself until you did the thing.
Work hard enough and it'll happen.
Work hard enough and it'll happen. Yeah. Like some pretty damaging, challenging mentalities. But we are talking ultimately about some ways that you are putting in the effort, you are investing, but in this expansive way of being healthy.
Yeah. And in loving, self-loving ways, and this is why I love the toolbox, because there is no one way that's going to work for everyone. And I mean, I don't actually know anyone that just one tool works for them. So having a toolbox of strategies that they can use, and it's no different than having a physical toolbox for, a mechanic or a carpenter. Like they don't have only a hammer and they can do all their work. No, we all need a variety of tools. And it's no different with our mental health. We need a variety of tools because what's working today or for this particular challenge isn't going to necessarily work 10 minutes from now on the next challenge or tomorrow on the other one. So, or even on the same challenge, the same tool doesn't work tomorrow. So it's, I think, so much more expansive of a paradigm to have a toolbox versus, a signature method of one thing fits all. No, one size does not fit all.
Yeah. Well, it is the classic, if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem's a nail. And I also see this a lot in how I do think we're getting better, but I see our society also as being very reactive to mental health and mental illness instead of being proactive. So it's only once someone is having problems with the screw that they can't use their hammer on that then they get a bunch of resources and screwdrivers and things in their toolbox. And what I really hope to establish with a lot of my work, as well as foundational pieces and tools, that people, when they're doing fine, they could just sit there. Those tools can be ready. And when the screw comes up, when I try to think of other analogies come up, right, that they have those tools ready to use instead of having to wait till after they're facing all of these challenges.
I love that. And I think it's so important because mental health is a spectrum the same way that physical health is a spectrum. And very few people are 100% physically healthy or 100% physically ill. Same thing with mental health. Very few are 100% mentally healthy or 100% mentally ill. Where most of us are somewhere on this spectrum, and it does vary, right, from day to day, minute to minute. So you don't have to have a mental illness or an invisible disability for these tools that we're going to talk about to be useful. Everyone can find use in mental health tools.
Totally. Well, and I'm sure you would have seen that even with pandemic, because there are things outside our control that can affect this too. And we know that mental health or mental illness has been on the rise with all the challenges people faced in the last couple of years. So I'm just really excited for you to be able to share the toolbox. So do you want to open it and start letting us in?
Love it. Let's open the toolbox. I love it.
The toolbox.
Well, one thing that I want to talk about that is actually really critical due to the pandemic is chunking. So we had a whole bunch of, some of us had a whole bunch of coping strategies before the pandemic. And every coping strategy is designed to stop a short-term stressor. That's what a coping strategy is designed to do. But unfortunately, we didn't know how long is this. We still don't know, like how long really is this all going to end. For some people, it's, more or less impactful right now. And there will be periods where it may be more or less impactful in your life. And we just don't know how long that's going to last. So the unknown can bring in and of itself like this sense of anxiety and uncertainty, and coping strategies generally don't work for the unknown length of time. So chunking things down into smaller blocks, whereas, for example, if maybe in the past you set yearly goals, whether that's an income goal or a well-being goal or whatever, and you just did a yearly thing and you worked towards that. Okay, by December of 2023, I'm going to be here. Well, now maybe you need to look at quarterly goals or monthly goals or weekly or daily. And if you're having a really tough day mentally, then maybe it's really an hour-long goal. Like, what can I do to feel better in the next hour, and not worry about the rest of my day, or the rest of the quarter, the rest of the year, whatever it is. So chunking things into smaller bite-sized pieces can be very, very helpful. So that's the first tool.
Well, first of all, that is a great tool. And once again, though, also speaks to some of these larger issues, and maybe a good place for people to start looking at their life as well, because it's not just the pandemic that had this longer term stress. But if you look in at least North American culture, there tend to be way more long-term stressors about, do you have enough money, and school and work, and those are consistent. So taking the time to hopefully ideally change the systems on a very big level, but even individually being able to look at your life and say, can I break away from being stressed about money for a little bit of time and give my brain that break, is a really critical thing as well. We're not built for long stress. We're built for, there's a tiger, and then calm down.
That's right. Absolutely. Yes. The human brain is the only one, out of all the animals, that carries the stress on after. Like the giraffe, the gazelle, the whatever, they see the tiger, freaked right out. Their body goes into that fight or flight mode, and then the tiger goes away, and 30 seconds, a minute later, they're totally fine. Even if you've ever seen a deer on the deer in the headlights thing, right? They're not stuck there for an hour. They have the scare, they freeze, and 30 seconds later, they're hopping off and just doing their thing. So we're the only ones who hang on to stress, even when the actual, whether it's danger or whatever the stressor is gone. So it's such a good point. Such a good point.
Yeah. Well, and just recognizing it's not easy to do this, but it is a practice that people can be looking into. So what's the next step here?
I think the next one I want to highlight is gratitude. And gratitude is something that, it's nothing new for sure. I remember Oprah talking about having a gratitude journal, and me as a teenager going, I'm not writing stuff down in a journal every day. A, I'll forget where my journal is. B, I'll forget to do it. That'll just cause me more stress. I so resisted. I was like, Yeah. But about probably 5 years ago now, I had a massage therapist, and she was working on me, and she was talking about this gratitude journal she has, which is called the 5-minute journal. And it was a digital thing on her phone, and they do make a hard copy, but yeah. And I thought, well, I'll never lose it, because my phone is always with me. And so if I go to visit my mom, it'll have it there or whatever. It can send reminders to me to remind me to do it. So until it becomes a habit, I have those daily reminders. And anyways, when you look at life through a lens of gratitude, you see more positive things. It's just literally one of those, what you focus on grows. And when you feel gratitude, you're feeling positive about what it is that you have. So even in the crappiest of days, I have one former client who, she started using this particular journal, and she would message me okay, I can only think of one thing today, but this is what it was. And I was like, good for you. Yesterday you couldn't think of anything. Today you have that one thing. High five yourself for that, which is another tool. Mel Robbins, high fiving yourself in the mirror, another amazing tool, because we cannot high five yourself and have a negative thought at the same time, because we are conditioned that high fives are for celebrations, way to go, whatever. So if you don't believe me, everybody just go and look in a mirror right now and high five yourself and see if you can say a nasty thing about yourself. You can't. It's impossible. So high five is another amazing, amazing tool. And you'll feel silly and ridiculous at the beginning in all likelihood, and that's fine. Anything new feels uncomfortable, and things that you don't have to do it in front of 100 people, just do it yourself in the bathroom mirror. So
I have not heard that one before, and I really love it. I mean, especially you're talking from a place with personal experience with depression, is one of the reasons it's so hard is it's hard to think of big actions,
Yes.
right? And so, these great little tools and tips, and this could be, for you don't have to have depression and diagnosis, like you said. You could be having a really horrible, hard day, and just to get that one little burst of happiness, that one little smile, that one little pause from berating yourself for something is huge. And I love that because it's just such a small action.
Yeah, it is. And it's something, we always have it with us, right? So we can always high five ourselves. So that's one I love as well. Absolutely. And I do want to mention, when I talked about the resistance to meditation, this is another great reason to have a toolbox, is that not all tools are going to speak to all people at all times. For years and years, I was resistant to the gratitude journaling. I'm still not a huge journaler. Like, I'm not a journal every day, other than my gratitude journal. I don't just like free write journal every day. And I know that that's an amazing tool that is super effective for some people. It doesn't call to me. It's just like, then it feels like I have to. And if I have to, I'm not getting joy out of it. I'm feeling this sense of like dread that I have to do it. So having a toolbox, or being able to pick out of the toolbox what feels good to you now, and even the ones that like maybe they don't feel good to you now, but you just put them away in that toolbox. You might not use that tool for 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And all of a sudden later on you think, maybe there is something to that journaling or that gratitude or whatever. And you've got it there in the toolbox, and you can just rummage through and find it.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned that, because people often do become champions for the method that works for them. And you'll have coaches or whoever, whatever supportive figure say, oh no, you need to do this method. This is the method that works. If you don't do this, you're never going to grow. You're never going to do well. And so just to say, give yourself the grace to keep searching for different tools and not judging yourself if some of them don't work. And it might take a while, which is probably the annoying part, is you might have to search and eventually you will find something that really clicks with you. And you go, why isn't everyone not doing this all the time?
Yeah, because it is natural that we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I got to tell everybody about it, and everybody has to do this.
Yeah.
Really, of course, they don't. They just have to do what's right for them. So that brings me to another tool that I think is really, there is a lot of resistance to, especially when people start, is meditation. So I don't know, Leah, if meditation, do you meditate?
Yeah.
And was it easy for you at the beginning?
So I kind of, I started self-development when I was a teenager and actually went to some meditation boot camps. So it's kind of hard to say when I started how it was, because it was pretty darn challenging, but in a pretty tough situation. Now I've actually found like it is part of my practice, but it's not a major one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you. A lot of people, meditate this much, and I find it useful to a point, but there's so many other pieces I can build in that aren't that strict practice, and that works well for me.
Yeah. So meditation is something, and again, it's just one way to become more present, to tune into yourself. All these tools really help us to tune into ourselves. And it's when we know how we're feeling, what's going on inside of us, that we are able to come to this come to life in a calmer way. Because our emotions and our anxiety and our depression are all things that are actually external to us, that are like, even they're rummaging around in our brain, they aren't us. They are things that are we're thinking, they're things that are happening to us, situations, but they're not us. So the more we can get tools that help us to come back to us, the better we're going to feel overall. So meditation is one of those ones that was really hard for me. When I was on like the medications at the psychiatrist, and I'm blessed that now I've been off medication for 5 years, but that does not mean that like I'm just one of the people, and I think it's like 10% don't ever need it, 10% only need it like episodically, and 80% need it all the time. So it's not to say anything about, yay, okay, everybody get off meds. Not at all. But it so happens I was there, and I'm a good student. I'm a very good student and a recovering people pleaser. So the psychiatrist would say, okay, are you meditating? And I had tried, like really, I had tried. It was not working for me. I was just monkey mind extraordinaire. And all that would happen is the thoughts would get louder and more annoying, and it was more stressful. But I didn't want to tell him that, because he told me that he meditates 3 times a day. And this is why he's so calm and the most calm psychiatrist in all of Brampton. And I was like, okay, all right, yes, of course I'm meditating. But I was not meditating because it was so stressful for me. But then it's kind of like reading books too. There's different genres, different styles of meditation, you know? Not everything is like sit on the mountaintop and sit in silence all day, right? There are many different ways to meditate, and some people find moving meditation better for them. And so, you know, it's not something, again, it's not, even meditation is not a one size fits all. And it's not necessarily about stopping your thoughts either. So there's a lot of misconceptions about meditation, but it is meditation, journaling, breath work. Those are all amazing things that can help us to like find the calm and the stillness and then feel better. Walking in nature. Oh my gosh. Walking in nature is so good for so many reasons. Like it's the chemicals from the trees. I don't know what they are. I am not the scientist. I'm the person that loves that other people do the science. Like Mel Robbins does the science and then tells you this high five habit works. Amazing. Jim Quick does the science and tells us about the brain stuff. Amazing. I just trust. There's amazing chemicals coming from the trees that our bodies need to self-regulate. So that's awesome. And breathing, you obviously are breathing more when you're walking, and you're just so many amazing benefits of being out in nature. Just amazing.
Well, I'm 100% with you. One of my degrees is in outdoor leadership. So I've spent a lot in my wilderness, or the therapy program I worked at was in the wilderness. So I'm 100% with you. Smelling that tree has positive effects on your brain for way longer than you'd think. So it is a huge one. Also can be harder if you're going through maybe some struggles, and to try to get the urge to put on layers if it's cold, or sunscreen when it's hot can be a bit harder. And one thing I just want to mention, because you know, a lot of the things we're talking about, I think, first of all, have a bit of a, people go, oh, that's hokey. I've been told to do this before. And a lot of that, I believe, comes back to what we were kind of talking about is it a fit for you? Right. So, you know, a lot of people teach self-care. I teach a component of self-care and often try to go beyond what people get because they're told to take walks and go have baths and all of these things. And it's not the action itself. It's what is it fulfilling for you? So if that quiet meditation on a mountaintop gives you that sense of calm and emptiness and connection to self, then go for that. If you're seeking energy, don't go mountaintop solo meditating, right? What would give you energy? Okay, well, let's go find that, because that'll connect you to yourself as well. So I think for anyone who ever hears this stuff and goes, oh, that's hokey, everyone says that, it's because a lot of people have those needs met by those things. So what is your need in that moment that you could be needing?
100%. And I think it's such a good point. And for me, when all else fails, I mean, I have this amazing toolbox. And the one thing it's not that it's my last resort, because I'll do it all the time anyways. But if I have started with other things and nothing else has worked that day, almost always for me, just putting on amazing music from the 80s and dancing, it will do it for me. It will just, so movement is super, super powerful, which brings me to my next tool, movement. And it can be whatever, like it doesn't have to be dancing. Some people hate dancing. Fine, don't dance. Like you can move in whatever way you want. Maybe it is walking out in nature. Maybe it's dancing. Maybe it's getting the hammer out and like, you know, making something. And I agree, Bonnie, that dancing to the 80s music is the best, but that's, you know, what we love. And so it's great. And Bonnie, I'm so glad she came. Thank you for tuning in, Bonnie. Bonnie is actually the woman I have to thank for bringing Intensati fitness into my life. So that is another form of movement that many, many people don't know about yet. There are very few leaders here in Canada. There are more in the States, but it was a practice that was designed 20 years ago. We just had our 20-year celebration in New York City, and I was there with Bonnie last weekend, the weekend before, I guess. And it is an incredible holistic practice. And the movement piece of it, because there's more than that. It starts with intention setting based on a theme. And then there's the movement piece, which is cardio plus affirmations. So let's just try. Are you game to try a movement here with me, Leah?
Yes, we'll do a little short one because we are coming up on time, but I would love to try it.
This will be the one. So this is happy. Now we can do it sitting or standing, but we'll sit for today. So let's just circle around happy. And this would have always been happy for 20 years. And let's just say, you can repeat after me. I am enough.
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 Keep the movement going and just think it. That's just one move out of intensati. And the move could be the same, and then the affirmations change. So that's another tool.
Oh, well, that is super cool. And I know you have a gift related to that today. Did you want to share that? That is.
Absolutely. So if anyone would like to come and try Intensati, I do teach it online. So you can find the link in the show notes. And it really is, like I said, starts with intention setting, does the cardio and the affirmations. Afterwards, we end with a visualization or meditation. And it's short, so don't worry if meditation is hard for you. It's totally fine. And then you have the opportunity to share if you want anything that came up. And if you don't, like some people share, some don't. Totally all good. But it really has been such a magical, transformative experience for so many that the first time I did it, I said, oh, I'm going to teach this someday. And so I'm proud to say I'm coming up on 1 year as a leader, and it's awesome. My gift to you to try it if you'd like.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, even just that little movement left me feeling very energized. So thank you for that. And thank you for this generous gift. And just thank you for being here today with some fantastic things, and I really appreciate it.
No, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me. It's always a joy to talk about it, and you have such a great wisdom as well with your experience. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next week, and remember, every thought counts.